Well, happy Memorial Day to everyone out there. I want to start tonight's conversation by recognizing one of my favorite things as being mayor, and that's the opportunity to participate in the Memorial Day parade. It's neat. You've got organizations that coordinate in veterans affairs in this town that are rarely talked about, but would be sorely missed if they weren't here. So the Legion and AMVETS and VFW and their auxiliaries, great job. And it seemed to me from the vantage point of a fire truck that was one of the larger turnouts on Harding Way. So that's always great to see, and you can as a participant in the parade, you can certainly see the importance that Memorial Day holds for a lot of people in our community. Great sunny day out at the cemetery, and probably the best part of the day is I got to walk back all the way back to my house from the cemetery, so that was good for me. I survived. But anyway, so it was a great time, and I would encourage people who haven't been to it in a few years to keep the tradition going, and we'll enjoy being back next year. Over this Memorial Day weekend, we started up the summer activities, the summer playgrounds, I guess, in certain sense, and the main playground in town is the one that we call the Splash Park. So over the weekend, they had a real good turnout, as if people were somehow communicating. It's funny to me that sometimes information travels slow around the community, but when it's something fun and exciting that I think families, kids look forward to, we have people waiting in line and ready to go. And unfortunately, that storm that rolled through kind of ruined things. And as I could tell by looking at the internet, it ruined some people's internet and cable yesterday too. So that was sort of an eventful afternoon. But up and running at the Splash Park, and really excited about seeing park improvements later on this summer. I saw a young father was swinging his two little daughters in the park as I drove through it, and I stopped and looked at it and saw it was one of the two swings on the swing set, and I thought to myself, just give us 60 days or so and we'll have ourselves a brand new park facility and brand new playground that dads like this young man be able to have a whole new park experience, we hope. So really wanted to mention that and encourage people to get out and utilize the parks. They are quite an asset, and we're really blessed in this community. I've said it a lot of times, to have the Freeze Foundation that has money each year for us to do really things in Galion and our park systems that many other communities our size could only dream about, or go to another town like Galion to enjoy, because we have those and other communities don't. Big weekend at the disc golf course too. It never ceased to be amazed at how that activity, the old reses that used to be for fishing and storing water, now a whole different kind of recreation out there, and quite honestly, a lot of people from around the region come here, so it has that travel and tourism promotional effect that we're really hoping to see in our parks as time goes on. So really coming in terms of what's coming up in the next few weeks, we've got some development opportunities. Boy, I'm overworking using that word. Development initiatives going on, and think that we'll either have a second reading tomorrow night or go ahead and vote on a second reading, the creation of a port authority. It's been good to see that community leaders, people on council, other people I've talked to, have taken the time to really research what a port authority can mean to the community. And although I'm certain that it won't have unanimous support throughout the community, or maybe even on the council floor, I'm hoping that unanimity can grow and we can get all 7 council votes on the creation of the Port Authority. Gives us a new tool to tackle what I think are the top 3 or 4 next major development achievements or obstacles we need to overcome to make a step forward in the community. So really I'll stop there and see if we have some questions.
Yes, first question tonight comes from Cindy. She asks, what is going on with the apartments behind Arby's?
On the last two steps of the process before any kind of construction can begin, I want to say before I go into a little more answer, remind me to get a hold of Eric tomorrow, Matt, and they need to get their grass mowed. But any event, schools, the school board approved a tax incentive agreement for them. That's a little. It's an important part of the project. Tomorrow night we'll come back to City Council, and my hope is that there'll be approval of that CRA agreement, and that will then trigger the construction, which will start as soon as plans are approved over at Richland County. So that's where it's at, and there'll be 36 units. Controversial in some respects because some folks who probably the apartments aren't designed for them in terms of rent and lifestyle. There's some concerns about the how quickly those apartments will fill up. I'm more optimistic than some, and time will tell which side of the argument's right. But there was a recently completed housing study, a county-wide housing study. Cindy, I'm over answering your question a little bit, but in that study, it showed really two major things, and that is there's a need for approximately 20 single-family homes, new homes in the area, and with a kind of a replacement rate of 1 or 2 new homes a year going forward. And then, not as a surprise to a lot of people who have been looking at this and quite honestly advocates of the apartment project, there's a need, a real gap for the kind of apartment complex that's being proposed. So the housing study itself is in a draft form. I think they're getting feedback, and then that'll be in a final form, and it'll be a public document. I think it's real encouraging to see where in Galion we need to do some new construction in both the owner-owned homes and in rental units. And so I think it'll provide some discussion, hopeful that some other apartment projects in the community will look at adding on units, and so time will tell about that. But the baseline answer to the question is tomorrow night at City Council we hope to have approval of the CRA agreement, and then soon after that plans approved and construction started.
Okay, thanks, Mayor. Next question tonight comes from Ashley. She asks, when is State Route 19/6th Avenue going to be fixed? It's in awful condition.
Yeah, it's I don't know the answer to that question. I know how to get the answer, and I'll tell you what we'll do about it. That section of 19 is really maintained by the section or the division of ODOT that's headquartered out of Delaware. There's a couple routes into Crawford County that Morrow County maintains on the state system. That's one of those routes. And we'll start tomorrow. We'll call over at Bucyrus and confirm that, and then get a hold of the folks in Bucyrus. I'm sure they're well aware of it. What I can find out and report back through probably our Facebook site is ODOT's plan for repairing that. When they made those improvements sort of in the southeast part of town, I was a little bit skeptical, like a farmer that knows how the grain's supposed to grow in somebody else's. I can't maintain my own potholes, but I know how to maintain the state's. But anyways, I was skeptical about how well that was going to hold, and it had one winter, and it's just delaminating. What they put down is just coming up in big chunks, and it makes it Only good thing I can say about it is for Jerry Marshall and his family out there, it slows the traffic down a little bit. But other than that, for folks going to Candlewood, it's been a pain in the axle, and we'll get word back from you. I got to believe that ODOT knows that section that they did just didn't work real well, and they've got a plan for this summer. It's not ours. In fact, you can see out there, it's not ours, officer. You can see where the signs are, the speed limit changes, and really where that delaminating, fancy word I guess, happens is south of the city limits out there on State Route 19.
Okay, thanks, Mayor.
Yep.
Next question tonight comes from Cindy. She asks, are there any plans for construction on Hesby Drive?
No. If that means like what I would call the Highland suggestion or extension, not right now. I think maybe it's the wrong approach, but I think one thing at a time there. Get the bus garage up. From what I understand of that project, it doesn't need Highland to be extended to the west. And I'd say that's a couple years off. Now, if the landowner and responding to this housing study I was just mentioning decides to develop some of that ground out there, that I can believe that might be a triggering event to finish up Highland. But until we see how a small subdivision might be laid out and where the entrance and exit into that set of residential subdivision, probably want to hold off. But I don't see anything in the near term there. I don't want to just get one or two things going in that property, and once we get some homes up on the west side of Hesby or commercial development, I think that'll be another possible triggering event.
Okay, thank you. Those are all the questions we have at this point. If anybody else would like to chime in.
Yeah, we've got really I think it's important to try to maintain this. Well aware it's a holiday weekend and people are some of them exhausted and ready for this weekend to end, and others are reluctantly having the holiday wind down. So I'm glad we had a few questions, and want to just keep the communication going. Say a few more things, see if a call comes in. Matt and I are working to try and come up with other ways to utilize this new technology. I'm sorry. It's new to me. It doesn't mean it's new to anyone else. But really be able to communicate. And we've talked a little bit. We're still trying to work through some of the issues. We've had just basic initial communication with Talk About Galion. Is that it?
Yes.
Yeah. So I know that they reach a lot of people and other entities that are communicating kind of on more than just a personal basis through social media. Try to link up with them and be a source of spreading information. Fire away.
Okay, just a question for clarification from Raina. She asked, did you say they are building a bus garage on the school campus?
Yeah, it's going up in, it's in the south, northwest corner of the Hesby Highland, but it's in behind a little grove of trees. Yep, it's moving away. It was slow moving like a lot of other construction, but it's going up, and that's certainly the. When I say we, I say the community of the school district. The mayor's not going to build school buildings.
And she had another question for clarification. Was a new levy put on for that? No,
it was. It's sort of a accumulated cash, from what I understand. Not to send out misinformation, but the schools are in a period right now where they're really not, and they haven't asked for a levy, and we've talked with them much. And I think if you have questions about the building and that project, I'd probably call the superintendent's office. I think it's probably under their management, that project. So, yeah, it's I'm not sure what they'll do with the building out on Edward Street, but one of the things that we have now is something that's on my mind a lot is we really don't have any industrial buildings, vacant industrial buildings, with the exception of a really a clean and I think soon to be occupied building out at the old Pico property. But one thing we need are some buildings. So we'll see what happens with the old transportation center. If the school has a need for that, or if there's some way that could be put into reuse. It's out on Edward Street for those that maybe aren't aware of that. So anyway, what do we got? Anything else?
Yeah, a couple more just came in. Next one comes from Marie. She asked for an update on a grocery store.
Yeah, I think that one of the first orders of business that Port Authority would be asked to tackle would be the putting together of a commercial building. I think that means a grocery store in our case, and get that moving. I think if it'll do one of two things. We'll either build a building, which would be a new grocery store, and I wouldn't think of it as a superstore. I would think of it as something in the 1,000 square foot at the max. When I say that, Geyer's was 21,000 square feet, so you get an idea of the relative size. And get on it'll do one of two things. We'll get the building built. We'll have a new grocery store. I'm very confident that we'll find an operator if we have the right kind of facility, and that will happen. Or the suggestion that a building's going to be built would encourage the landlord to take the final steps that they need to take in order to get the existing, or not the existing. Heck, it's been almost a year. The former Geyer site back in business's grocery store, but really believe that in the first few weeks after council approves creation of a port authority, in the ordinance itself, it's going to list the members. So it's not a matter of creating the port and then going out and trying to get people to serve on the board. So those people have agreed to serve. I want to say coincidentally that they were all real excited. And sometimes when you ask people to serve on a board, it's they better owe you a heck of a favor, or the answer is probably not. But when it comes to this Port Authority, people are very enthusiastic because they can see the handful of things right off the bat, as they say, that will be things that can be tackled and go from not here in this town to here in this town and thriving. So the grocery store and a small little commercial, maybe some another small retail space in a shopping center in a place probably yet to be determined, but I think that's really certainly what the port's going to be about in its early months after its inception. Some people are probably not yawning but rolling their eyes perhaps and thinking, Port Authority, I barely understand what it would do and how it would function, let alone how that can lead to constructing a grocery store. But sometime when either come on up and we'll talk about it, or maybe another time we can talk about how the Port Authority's intervention into the construction cost and the finance cost of a new grocery facility would be very favorable, and I think trip the scale over into this makes good financial sense. Some reluctance now, I think at this point, for anybody to jump in and build a building as a straight commercial private sector proposition. So.
Okay, thanks, Mayor. Next question tonight comes from Matthew. He says over at the intersection of South Market and Atwood, people are using Atwood as a drag strip and blowing through stop signs. Any chance on getting more police patrols out there?
Yeah, I think that there is an increased level of enforcement out there, and I don't know. I use that, I don't know, drag strip. There is a lot of uncertainty out there, and we're trying to clarify that. Whenever you make a change, for me, it's not every time, but it's kind of by contrast. When the signal was taken down at Columbus in Church, over by the post office, which traffic counts will tell you is a busier intersection than Market and Atwood. That change proceeded pretty well. I didn't hear about nor see as big a problems. And you've got a long section on Church Street where speeds could increase. Now, granted, there's a Market and a Liberty Street light, but so whenever you do that, it's important to have studied the circumstances. And so what we did in this case was to hire a traffic engineer, and the firm came in, videotaped the intersection, and came up with this proposal. The traffic light was unnecessary and mechanically on its last legs, and a decision was made to put a two-way stop on Market so as to slow down traffic on Market, and simply have through traffic on Atwood. So I still think that was the best solution. I do think, I'm not sure how much speeds have increased, but the end of the question, or the end of the situation, is people being cautious and being aware of the change, and then getting some police out there. I hadn't seen the speeds up, but I'll mention that and have them keep an eye out for the increase in speeds. I think people just need, I know it sounds maybe a little trite, but people just need to be careful at Atwood and Market and adjust to the change.
Okay, next question tonight comes from Dee. She asks, any plans by the owner of the old Elliott Machine site?
No. I'm sorry. I mean, it needs to set vacant before it reverts back. I believe it's 2 years vacant before it reverts back, so then it would be a non-conforming use. It's still in there as an industrial or commercial building. Now, when it sets vacant for 2 years, then it really will fall into it'll be in a residential zoning classification, and that will really that'll cause the owner to either tear it down or occupy it as it approaches that 2 years of vacancy. I don't think it's in the wrong place, and the building's had a pretty good useful life at this point.
Okay. Next question tonight comes from Amber. She asks, are there any updates on the bike trail?
Yeah, we're trying to figure out where to locate the parking lot now as we get ready for the plans to be sold. If you were put on a lot of mosquito spray right now, and that's going to be an issue once the trail is open, because it is right by the creek, and we'll have to make sure we spray or do things to kill the larvae back there. But anyways, if you were to go back, gosh, it's what do they call that place? It's a boutique and clothes store.
Caribbean Tanning.
Yeah, they seem to be having a lot of business, and it's good for them. But anyway, I talked to somebody whose daughter found a prom dress. She was like really happy about it and was crowing about what a great little place it was. Anyways, if you go south, it's kind of back to that question about any construction on Hesby. Maybe a different answer is if we could get any development south of Bucyrus Road, we'd probably line that up with Hesby Drive, and maybe there'd be an extension south. But if you were to go back in there, you'd see that the trail has been staked, and we're in the process. There are 3 or 4 property easements that we have to get over by Hosford Road by the wastewater treatment plant, and at that point construction should begin. And we're kind of anxious here in the office to see what kind of bids we have outside of the kind of difficult area to work in. There's not a lot of construction, so I think it'll be a matter of mobilization and getting materials to the site that'll be the complicating, probably the most costly factor.
Okay.
And let me anticipate a question on that. I think new technology is going to be our friend in terms of the safety aspects of that. So our plan is, although it's not engineered in the plans, is to have solar-driven sort of panic stations or emergency call stations. So if somebody is back there and in the rare event something happens, either somebody gets hurt or anything like that, you need an EMS. We hope to be able to equip that, although a lot of people have cell phones.
All right, thanks.
But anyways, we're going to do that. There'll be benches. I don't know. I mean, just hang in there. I know I've been talking about it for years, but no one's more frustrated, I think, than Matt, who I keep interrupting, and who's trying to get this project brought home, and myself. So it's been a long time, but the first section should be done later this year.
All right. I just want to point out to everybody, Crawford County was just issued under a tornado watch. So thanks for pointing that out, Gene. And I just got the notification as well. So tornado watch right now, everybody.
Okay. All right. Well, any other questions?
Just a couple more to wrap up here.
Good.
Next one comes from Tom. He wanted to point out our building inspector does not keep up with the unmowed yards, in particular the Save-A-Lot property.
Oh, really? Oh, yeah, I think out there in the frontage.
Yeah, I think that's what he's referring to.
Yeah, I'm really got this paperclip thing. I apologize. I mean to be so distracting with that. Yeah, that we ran into that last year. Some of that is the cities, and we'll check in the morning. Most of it is probably Save-A-Lot stuff. The right-of-way there, the highway is pretty wide, and I noticed that today. Or not today, but over the weekend. Driving out there like in the Dairy Queen and that new development area. When it was farm all the way out there and there wasn't something on the other side, just kind of got used to it getting shaggy, but it is in pretty bad shape. As far as a general comment about him keeping up with it, I think it's, the ones that haven't been mowed are out of control, but it's rained so way above normal. And actually, I don't know the exact number, but I think he sent out a lot of hate mail. I say that because I've been mentioned to me in public. It's like, oh, we got a letter from your building inspector. And then they always generally either are nice about it and they're going to get it mowed, or they have some reason, and it's usually Eric's fault, but it's probably their fault. But yeah, you can definitely see the issue of abandoned homes and the problems of foreclosure in the community about this time of year, and our contractors should be out there weed whacking the heck out of it so we can get it mowed. What else?
Okay, and I just want to point out a nice comment from Larry. He said it was a very nice service this morning at Fairview for Memorial Day, and a good way to remember our veterans.
Yeah, it was, for sure. And they said, oh gosh, one of the guys from the motorcycle group, I never can get the League of
Motorcycle Riders.
I want to say Legion of Doom. I must be a football fan. But anyway, they had one of their members read the list, and they read the list of veterans that had passed during during 18 from one Memorial Day to the next. And it was a really long list, and all they read were the people at Fairview and at the Mount Calvary Cemetery. He said that there were 200 in the Veteran Service Office in the county. He said there were over 200, like 225 veterans died in Crawford County last year. So that was a sobering and not particularly surprising moment. I think it's a message to all you young families. We need to increase the population in the county. So if we have a bad storm and you need to snuggle up to your wife or your loved one, anyways, everyone be safe tonight. We do need more kids in this county, so we're going to build playgrounds and activity centers and grocery stores, and continue the ascent of the schools in terms of getting better. And we're going to really feel strongly that everybody who wants to be kind of on the ship of Galion is on the ship, and we're, I think, sailing in a good direction. And the folks that that aren't happy, then chip in and try to make it better. And we'll keep working beginning tomorrow and the rest of the week. Heck, at least 8 or 9 hours a day. Anyways, thanks a bunch. Hopefully we get through the storm tonight and get back to work in beginning of the summer. Thanks.